welcome back. We're here for part two of our conversation. In the first half hour or so, we dove deeply into empowerment and transformation and rebirth and all sorts of different things. And when we left off, it was really juicy, except for I've been frozen for most of that session, and we've restarted now. And I'd like to hand it over to Lisa so you can pick up from where you wanted to leave off.
Well, it's just struck me when Vanessa read the definition, and one of the words was Renaissance. And when we're talking about rebirth, how it completely applies to the world as we live in it right now too. And that, a Renaissance happened after a previous plague. And so I wanted to create a challenge for us all because, after the 100 years ago plague, it was followed by the Roaring Twenties. So I was trying to think of what we could call this decade of 20s.
Well, I'll tell you what, you're spot on, Lisa.
Be the ones to stake claim to it,
That is such an interesting concept for you to present. So do you have any forward-thinking megatrends that come to mind for you?
Well, I have played with it for a while, and it's not my word, but the reuniting 20s, or something like that. But even playing with whether it should be a verb kind of thing, or just completely switch it up. Renaissance, that was all standalone. But I thought since it's the 20s again, why not try to name it, claim it?
That's interesting. Now, I don't have any evidence for this, but the seeming to me is that after each of the great plagues that we know of that are in history, our population doubled in the next 10 years. They grew at such a fantastically more rapid rate than population was growing prior to the plagues. I wonder if we're going to see something like that as well.
Be surprised.
Yeah, I think we went from something like 50 million people, 30 to 50 million people in 1900 in the United States to over the next 50 years, 200 million or 150 million by 1960, 1970. And we're just under 400 million now. And, it's very interesting that the plagues seem to have something to do with that. The Roaring Twenties once more in our lifetime.
Redo, yeah, rebirth. Roaring Twenties, rebirth.
Well, it's definitely a pattern interruption.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you have a pattern interruption, some kind of jarring event in your life, that's a time to reflect, and then kind of recalibrate, course correct, or, whatever. But it's definitely, this has been a big pattern interrupt. It's been global.
Yeah.
It's like you said, like you said, can anything, an extreme, either positive or negative, and when you're in that level of it, and it could, to a lot of people, this had both aspects in it, but it was, so it's definitely an interrupter, so a movement for transformation.
Yeah, and it's just, isn't it interesting how, it's always happened. It's just tends to be a more subtle thing. So it's harder for us to be mindful about it and intentioned about transformation, and what we want it to look like. So, when everything's going well, whether it's in, it's funny, Jim Collins, my favorite business author, talks all the time about the 20-mile march. And his idea behind that is taking disciplined action consistently in both good times and bad. And, and he finds that a lot of companies, he wrote about it in a book called How the Mighty Fall, they go through a cycle of decline because they're successful. So they stop paying attention because they're successful. So we're healthy and we stop paying attention and we don't take care of ourselves the way we should because we feel good. Yes. Until we don't. Now the pattern interrupt comes, the heart attack or whatever it's going to be. And that's what shifts you into changing behavior. So, so my curiosity is on the other side of this, will more people recognize the value of how they pay attention to the day-to-day moments of transformation that they're gifted with as long as they're alive, you know, and what that will lead to in the future, you know.
There's another thought here too. You know, Lisa, you talk about the recurring pandemics that we've had over the last 1,000 years. We might be the first generation that is mindful of that fact, you know, pretty much across civilization, that they did occur, you know, in the 1917 to 1920, you know, et cetera, back to the 1500s, back to 800 AD, et cetera. We might be the first culture that is very mindful of that actually occurring.
It's a good point. Yeah, that'd be an interesting thing. Like, when did the Roaring '20s become the Roaring '20s?
Sure.
How many decades after that happened did someone look back? You know, because when they were in it, they didn't have the level of connectivity that we have now,
right?
To really recognize on a macro scale what was occurring. We're connected than any humans have ever been in the history of humanity. It's a pretty interesting place to be.
When we talk about 6 degrees of separation, not any longer. It really is much closer than that.
Yeah.
When you look in terms of, I don't know about y'all, but I have just under 3,000 LinkedIn friends or connections, just under 5,000 on Facebook. Those are the only 2 that I know my numbers for. However, you know, if I want to meet somebody else, they're in all walks of life. Allison Maloney, and Al Terzi, and, you know, baseball players, and all these people all across the country. If I want to meet somebody who's in baseball, I can just get in touch with, you know, Mr. Baseball himself, you know, and quite frankly, I don't ever think of it in terms of that. What would be the use, you know, of calling Donnie Baseball and saying, hey, can you get me an autographed baseball from so-and-so? And Mr. Mattingly would probably do it because, you know, we knew each other for about eight years off and on from a distance. What's useful about this connectivity? What sort of transformation is possible? What sort of rebirth is possible, given that we're going through this interruption with all this access to not only information, but people, anyone on the face of the planet?
I'll go if nobody else has a thought.
Whoever's next, you'll know who you are. Go ahead, Ken.
But yeah, I think it's just we just have access. You know, it's such a powerful thing. I mean, I think about all the thought leaders that you can connect to that are so freely giving of themselves. You know, I'll give you a couple of examples. I mean, Seth Godin is a good one, who's, you know, he's written books and you can buy them, but you don't even need to. He's blogged every day for over a decade, you know, and it's all he can give you more inspiration, motivation, insight, education you could possibly ask for through his podcast and his blog alone. Joe Polish, you know, he's a marketing guru. He's got paid programs and stuff, but he's got a podcast called I Love Marketing. Everything you will ever need to know about marketing is in that podcast. Like, you could literally get a master's degree in modern day marketing through his podcast, and it's just freely out there. And he'll return your emails. You know, I mean, this is a guy that I sent him an email. I had met him a couple times and I thanked him for just being an amazing dude, and you know, shared just a very brief little note about how I had used a lot of his principles in my business, and I was going to use it to scale Quester's Way. So he sent back a recommendation for a book called The Road Less Stupid. He said one of the best business books he ever read, and I said, I'll have to pick it up, you know. And then he emailed me back and said, I'm mailing you a copy. Give me your address. And he just mailed me this. You know, this is the world we live in now. You know, where if you're looking for it, there are just so many brilliant gifted, flawed, battling people. Joe Polish is one of the things that he does. He has a foundation for addiction. He's an addict, and in every way. I mean, drugs, alcohol, sex, freely admits it, talks about it. And, he was just a dead broke carpet cleaner who figured some things out. And now he's out there saying nothing special, just willing to do the work and raise up other people to do their work as well. So that's the value that's all around us every day if you're looking for it.
Yeah. So in the meantime, while we're having our little podcast here, and our intention is to give people access to cultural and community empowerment and the ability to take a situation that's non-functional or dysfunctional and create a conversation amongst all of us where we are doing exactly that, Ken, that you just said, freely giving the leg up and the energy and the vitamins, to the community and to the culture, to the world, that allows for us to transform what wasn't particularly good habits and nice treatment prior to the pandemic. We actually can be the new people. There's no question about it.
And to Ken's point, well, because last week, and I get so many emails and newsletters and things like that, and usually motivational or spiritual, but this was somebody's book launch, and they were having an all-day thing, but I didn't know how intense and impressive it was going to be. And she's a woman. She created the It cosmetic line that's just very popular on QVC, and is a billionaire. She's a billionaire now, but so she wrote a book and decided to do an all-day event with some slightly motivational people. So Tony Robbins let her use this huge Zoom studio. I mean, it was insane. And it was everybody I've ever heard of, like Mel Robbins, the woman that I can't remember her name, that invented Spanx, Dan Graciosi, Tony Robbins was there, Robin Robbins was there, Chrissy Mertz was there from the show This Is Us. I mean, it was never ending, and the whole day, and all of her proceeds from her book were going to feed one of the Feeding Millions programs, and I don't know if it was food. That wasn't Food Share, but Feeding Millions, I think maybe. But anyway, but just that level of giving back once you have, and then to connect with. I mean, she had over 200,000 people watching through YouTube, Zoom, and other and Facebook.
Yeah. So
just that level of what's happening in the world once you get something, and then you can give back, and how many people want to do that and are helping support people in doing that. So like Ken was saying, that's what this connection can do, if we hang on to the positivity aspect of it.
What's interesting about that, Lisa, the fact that this is not something that is post-pandemic. It's not new. It's been happening all along. Yeah. It's just what have you been paying attention to, And I mean, you think about, I think the first Tony Robbins, I think I listened to Tony Robbins first on cassette.
Right.
He's been around a long time doing this, and there's so many of them. Yeah. That this is, it's not a new thing. It's just that as our world, as Bill said, has become more connected, they're creating this incredible level of access. Like, I know one of Tony Robbins, I think it's The Edge was the name of the program. It's now freely available on an app. You can get the whole thing for free. And that used to, I paid probably a couple $100 for it on CDs, back in the day when he released it. And he's just, he's generated all this abundance. He's continued to, go through death and rebirth in his professional and personal life. So as he's created new content, he's put content out there that anyone can get a hold of now. Anyone with a phone, can now have access to this incredible treasure trove of personal development. It's just sitting there for you,
Now, because of the
Cool.
pandemic, he had to create. He was not going to stop till he could get to people, more people. He couldn't do the live in in-person events anymore, and he wanted to still reach everybody. So he made he contacted everybody he could to create this incredible Zoom room, with hundreds of screens and all special effects and stuff like that. And it was occasions like this that would only be available to people that could afford the ticket to get in.
Yeah.
Now because of this, more people can access it and know it's out there now. So I think that's a great point, that because of what's happening now, we get to see more things.
The other, I'm sorry, Bill, I'm going to say one more thing. The other thing that's interesting, and that none of us should lose sight of, Tony Robbins started by helping one person. And he talks about it in his early work. He's like, how can I help 100 people? And then he just did it. How could I help 1,000? How could I help 10,000? Yep. He just started and never stopped. And, and I think that's important. I know I have to remind myself a lot of that, because sometimes I get frustrated. I think my little blog I've been doing, I think could be helpful, but not many people read it, and it's Seth Godin talks about it. 1% of the global population has ever picked up one of his books, so you got to trust the fact that the impact is there, even if you're not seeing it to the scale that you feel that you would like to be able to contribute at. That's okay.
So I also think that what is interesting is the government creates all of these ways forward. For instance, NASA, almost all of the technological advancement that we've seen in the last 50 years had its birth, in the space programs. Everything from Tang, to paste in a tube, to this remarkable machine that actually kills COVID viruses in the air and emits hydroxyls and superoxides, and all this sort of thing came from the space shuttle. So in the meantime, where are the other areas, like in social media, where all the money has been available, to do all of this political campaigning and using those platforms for that purpose? What will be the residual effect of all of those connections being made once it's no longer of interest for people to keep spending the billions of dollars promoting some sort of thinking? Okay, so like the Tony Robbins, when does that necessarily break into all of the social media and the hundreds of people that were on the call that you were on, Lisa, where they all start having their opportunity to cast their own stones, first helping one person, then helping 100, then blowing the next thing it's Fiji, right? Everybody goes to Fiji. So when you think in terms of what has come before, I actually would predict that there will be a transformation in media and social media that goes beyond just a point of view that is profitable for somebody in some corporation somewhere. I think that we're on the edge of really busting this thing wide open.
Well, won't it be interesting to see what people choose to feed their attention to? Imagine if some group put together a not-for-profit that was designed to educate people to what a candidate was really about, and that's where everybody chose to get their information from, and they felt that it could be, an unbiased, trustworthy platform. Then all the candidates would campaign there, because that's where the people are listening. They're campaigning the way they are and spending the money the way they are, because that's what they have to do to reach the people they hope will vote for them. So if we change where we're willing to listen, they're going to change their behavior,
Right.
So,
but stop and think about what happened first, okay? The Kardashians made social media. They were the ones in 2006 and 2007 that made Barack Obama's campaign possible on social media. So they used that technology in a way that had never been used before quite successfully. Donald Trump took it a mile further in 2016. Not only was he able to get the ear of all of the social media, he was able to get free advertising and interviews on almost all the major networks. Now, fast forward to this past year. I'm saying once the politics is out of the conversation because it's kind of run out of gas and it's gone, it's whatever, they've got all the power they need. There's nobody that can oppose them any longer. What good is all of that technology and all of those connections? What's possible from that? If we just forget the politics, like each one was standing on the shoulders of what came before, good, bad, or indifferent. The transition I think that we may be going through, we deserve some good. We definitely deserve some good.
It's probably already there, you know. I mean, it will be interesting to see, because it really, I just always come back to that. It's what do we all decide on a day-to-day basis through our actions is the thing we want to feed, you know. And you know, I mean, Tony Robbins has had a Facebook presence and page for, you know, as long as there's been Facebook, I'm sure. So, and there are a lot of people who've never looked at anything on his site, you know. So the more people that go there, you feed that, the more it's going to populate, and all the offshoots and branches of that positive, you know, personal development stuff you'd think would start to populate more and more through social media, you know. It's up to us.
Quite interesting.
Yeah.
Lisa, Vanessa, any thoughts? It's like Vanessa is unmuted.
Yeah, she's on mute. I'm wondering if she maybe had to drop out for a minute to deal with something. So
yeah. Well, the thinking part of this is more like, in my opinion, playing heads up ball, to look to see where there's traction, anything that's working and positively. Lisa, are there plans to do other broadcasts like the one that you were talking about?
I wouldn't doubt that it would start a catalyst of some sort, because I mean, the name of her book is Believe It, and every single person was about how you can believe in yourself, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, here's some steps to take. So if this was so successful, I can see the rest of them trying to do a book, you know, a book launch that way. And why not? You know, especially if you have that kind of support around you. Like I said, I mean, I stumbled upon it, and there were so many freebies, like Ken would say, you know, they're so willing to give of themselves. So if you purchase the book, you got freebies. And so I just can't imagine, you know, then you spread out from there. So now those people that you didn't even might not have heard of, there's only one that I think I hadn't heard of, but you know, now they have a new audience, and so that's going to spread. You know, I just think it's the domino effect kind of thing. But
it's that pebble.
And I do. What's that?
It's that pebble. And,
yeah, right.
And sooner or later, when you start using a cannon that you can put millions of pebbles into, you can get this place rocking. If you hear of any more of those going on, Lisa, would you please share with me, and I'll put it up on my Facebook page, because I think the more the merrier, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I wonder if the more humans that start to consider, you know, we're talking a lot of head-based stuff, but there's what are you holding in your heart when you go to sleep? The last thing you're feeling that you're holding as having value in your heart, and the first thing you wake up to, you know, like what frames your day? Is it anger? Is it resentment? Is it love? Is it passion? You know, like what are those values? What does it feel like to be, you know, a contributing human in this point in time? And it's always been interesting to me, you know, how what you hold changes what you see. You know, it changes your whole perceptions, you know, of the world around you. So all of a sudden, these things that, you know, Lisa's talking about, we're just finding them, you know, because we're paying attention in a different way. And that just shifts what we're looking for in the world around us, it's all there. It's like that thing, the Western perception is the universe is knowable, but the Eastern is the universe is unknowable and it's observable. So, and I always like that better because there's way more that we'll never know than there is that we would know, but we can open ourselves up to paying attention, to observing. So now what are we looking for? Are we looking for the light in people, the good in people, the value in the technology, the potential value in the change, or the violence, or, all of it could birth something better if we look for those things. And of course, there's also the other sides of the coin. There has to be, it's the yin and yang dynamic, but where do we look? And I find that when I'm holding certain things in my heart intentionally, that brings, there's just an interesting impact to that.
Well, it's the law of attraction, Ken. The main thing that binds us all is this funny ability to give our attention to something. And when we do, the manifestation of whatever we're attending to is almost a given. Like, for instance, it shows up, the old story of you buy a Honda and then it seems like every car on the road is a Honda. Well, it's the same thing when you're looking for really, really great people, and you're looking for folks that are up to something good. It just is amazing how many more people show up if you're out, and you're in circulation. If you're at home and you're not circulating very much, you're going to see the same great people that you always see. And at the same time, each time we go out and have a conversation with somebody else who really is great and really and truly is up to something, holy mackerel, they make an imprint. I mean, it's there. It's now this whole new avenue of folks I didn't know that I really wanted to get to know better, And that's kind of like what networking is for me. It's more or less having Easter every day. There's going to be somebody else out there today that's going to have a very powerful positive impact on my life. And that's my intention. My life and the lives of those who I love and those who, who I haven't met yet, but are already my friends.
Stranger, I do not yet know. I was thinking this because I had like the opposite thing happen. I was getting afraid that I was losing my desire to be socially in person with people.
Yes.
And all of a sudden the universe said, "Oh, no, you don't." So I went to a live thing last night, now I planned a dinner and a lunch next week, that kind of thing. And it was like, oh, thank you. And I met some amazing people because I wanted to attend a Zoom event, and something happened. So we ended up having like an hour-long conversation, and we're like, it's another awesome, like you said, networking opportunity that I would have not have known her. So because of my desire not to be socially isolated, the universe prevented me with opportunities to get myself back out there again. So I thought that was interesting.
If you stop and think about it, 70 to 80% of social media in the last year has been based on fear, greed, and envy, okay? It has had absolutely nothing to do with empowerment. It has nothing to do with community development and growth. It has had nothing to do with ending poverty or hunger or any of those sort of things, because those are constructive. And the situation in terms of how the communication mechanism in media has been used leaves people in that space of being fearful, greedy, or envious. And all you have to do is look at, what's been going on in the financial markets. How much is Bitcoin worth today? Can you ever imagine in your lifetime to have something that has no intrinsic value being traded at $50,000 a unit? That's Bitcoin today, okay? So that tells me that people are hungering for something. They're hungering to be part of something that's big and is growing. So, Lisa, ask your friends to keep giving us all they've got. Ken, same to you. And Vanessa, anyone have any final thoughts? We're at the top of our half hour.
Thought that was good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Everyone be really well, and I'm looking forward to our next chat next Thursday. Bye for now, y'all.
Sounds good. Bye-bye, all.
Y'all.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, A World That Works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can hear us at exvadio.com/podcasts, Apple Podcasts app, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts.